Well, I'm so glad you're here today. We got a lot to discuss. I remember when I first met you earlier this year, God laid it on my heart. We ended up doing lunch together, and you were at an interesting place in your career. Before we jump ahead or get into that, why don't you just do a quick introduction of who you are, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm not a native Charlottean, but I did
Neither
grow
am I.
up.
Nobody here is.
Nobody.
We're all good.
I grew up right outside of Fayetteville, North Carolina, just south down I-95. Vietnam. I grew up in the town of Lumberton, North Carolina.
My son did his very first mission trip ever there.
Great place to do a mission trip.
That's funny.
So I grew up in the largest county in North Carolina, Robinson County. What's unique about it is that I have a background. I'm Native American, Lumbee Indian. Not a lot of folks know about that, but we were just talking about the Detroit, Michigan area. And there's a certain small population of Lumbee Indian natives that live there, as well as Baltimore and as well as the county I grew up in. So it's a pretty unique thing that I get to grow up. And I often over the years have forgotten just what a privilege it was to grow up in the family I did. But it was neat growing up.
That's awesome. And now what do you do?
So, ironically, I'm in a profession that has about 7,000 clinicians in the country. So I'm in prosthetics and orthotics. And prosthetics is obviously when someone loses a limb, whether that's due to an accident, it could be congenital, a number of different reasons. Cancer, diseases that cause amputations. Diabetes is the largest reason for having an amputation in this country right now.
Really?
There's an average of about 5,000 amputations every day in the U.S. Wow. So believe it or not, I tell everyone, we just don't live in the Bible Belt here in the Southeast. We live in the buffet belt because our diets are not great, but it's getting better. And then as far as the orthotic side of discipline of what I do, I get to treat kids with cerebral palsy, spina bifida, scoliosis, brain injuries, any pathology or disease that requires bracing to help him or her be ambulatory again, walk again, have a better way of life, prevention of further surgeries, help them and bring value back to their life. I get to do that as well.
Man, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. Now, I wanna find out what brought you into that business, but before we jump into that, answer me this question. What is the most satisfying aspect of your business? Of what you specifically get to do in your business?
I think for me, selfishly, it's seeing someone get up to walk again for the first time when they haven't walked for 2 to 3 months since the amputation. And ironically, I just had a gentleman last week who is a retired firefighter locally here, and he hasn't walked since almost 1 year. He's been non-ambulatory due to infection and some bony abnormalities with his foot. He chose to have it amputated 1.5 months ago, and he got up last week to walk for the first time. And so his surgery was performed in Durham. He then came back with his wife to the Charlotte area, and to see him get up and walk again for the first time since January, and his wife to see the emotions and her actually record that, you can't put a price on it. Mm-hmm. So that's probably my favorite aspect of seeing my patient clientele, but there's several different ones, especially with little kids.
Makes you kind of jealous, I know the favorite, great aspects of what I get to do for a living doesn't compare to that at all. Like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine giving somebody mobility again who's lost it due to whatever reason, and being able to experience that on a regular basis.
Sure.
Would just give me such a different perspective on life. That is amazing.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes we forget the impact we're making on someone's life, whether it be financially and giving them wisdom and guidance, or whether it's in what I'm doing in the medical field. You're just providing a positive outcome for the patients and the people you get to do life with.
So how'd you get in the business?
So growing up for me, grew up in a very sports athletic family. My brother and I were both fortunate enough to play in college, different sports. He played baseball, I played football. But growing up, I had a good friend of mine Spent quite a few summers on White Lake in Elizabethtown, North Carolina, if you guys know where that is. Mm-hmm. But he had a boating accident, and we were in middle school and going into high school, and I was fortunate enough to get to travel with him to a little town in North Carolina called Pinehurst, North Carolina, golf capital of the world,
Pinehurst.
Right? So I traveled with him to see his clinician once in middle school, and I walked away from that with the same impression I still have today: is he just changed his life because he's walking. And I just thought it was cool. I really was infatuated with medicine at that time, even in middle school. I really liked anatomy and enjoyed that aspect of it. So fast forward 10, 15 years later, I'm in undergrad and I've got to make a decision, right? And I'm still infatuated, know what I want to do with medicine. So I decided to apply to graduate school after I graduated with an undergrad degree in sports medicine, and was fortunate enough to get into Northwestern University in Chicago and attain my graduate degree in prosthetics and orthotics. So that's how I ended up in my profession. It's a lot of folks are jealous of that because they're like, "How did you know so early what you wanted to do?"
Yeah,
I just think it's just a direction I wanted to go. But there was another part of me that wanted to own the business as well. So there were two primary things, and you always hear about growing up: find what you're passionate about and where you're talented, and see where God can intervene.
We're part of a business group together in C12, and faith is a very big part of your life, very big part of mine. And it's a big part of the business that I'm so fortunate to run. How does faith, logically, I can just listen to some of your stories and go, oh man, it's got to be so easy to see faith as a part of your business, your practice, what you get to do. Because I would imagine the people that when you first meet them, they got to be super low. They go from fully functioning potentially to not able to walk or lose an arm, and their desire to talk to Jesus, to get spiritual would probably be at a peak in their life as at other times. So I'd imagine that kind of comes up. So can you talk to that aspect of your business?
Yeah.
What you do?
I think one of the neat things for me is you just hit on a high point is usually when I get to see someone preoperatively who's had or is going to have an amputation performed.
Yeah.
There's not many folks that I meet who don't want to pray.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I would imagine.
That's a great opportunity for me to grab their hand. Would you mind if I pray with you? Oh, absolutely.
They're very open.
It's a grown man, right?
Yeah.
And
please pray with me.
He's ready to pray.
Yeah.
So that's a great opportunity. And that's one aspect that I enjoy about being an owner in a business is that someone says, "Can I pray? Do you mind if I pray with a patient?" Or one of our team members says, "Do you mind if I do this for so-and-so at this homeless shelter?" Well, that's your faith kicking in. That's your relationship with Christ, serving other people. Mm-hmm. So that is a big deal in our business.
I've noticed that in our business, where when somebody comes in, they're super wealthy and they're wanting to plan for retirement, and they're looking at me more as a potential obstacle or somebody they want to, conquer or tell me how good they are. Those type of people, good, bad, or indifferent, may not be as open to a prayer or relationship about spirituality.
It's very true.
When somebody comes in, they haven't done a very good job saving, and they're fearing they're never going to be able to retire.
Yeah.
And they're searching for hope. They're searching for help. Those are the people that, can we, before we jump in, can we pray, or can I pray for you?
Yeah.
I've had people break down. Early in my career, I didn't know what I was getting into. And it took me like less than a year to start stocking tissues in my office, for those moments where, people just start breaking down.
Yep.
And that's where your heart breaks for them. And you're like, can I pray for you? Can I share whatever? Sure. And there's the lower people are, the more they're open to that conversation about God or that intervention of prayer. The more secure and self-reliant they are, I feel like the less open they are. That's why I made that observation, because I'm like, I see that in my space. they come in, they got more money than they're ever going to spend. They're like, I don't need to pray, but they're like, I don't know if I'm ever going to retire. They're like, can you pray? Which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
Because we think we got the money,
right.
And that just stinks.
Empathy is so important to be able to. So in my position, I try to put myself in that patient's position of if they're 45 years old, got a family to support. Well, I take that as a responsibility to be able to get them up and move. And when I put myself in their position, it certainly puts an aspect of empathy into my personal life that I can relate to them. And then we walk alongside them to get them going again. Right. And so when you're able to give someone some independence and they're able to walk again and actually take care of themselves, whether that be self-hygiene, working again, being back in the gym, working out, going for a walk. I just had a patient 2 weeks ago who went to the Blowing Rock, North Carolina, and went on a hike for the first time in 2 years. And it wasn't how far he went. It was the fact that he could drive himself to meet his friends, to go for a hike at Blowing Rock and enjoy being outside again. We just take that for advantage.
Man, I can't listen to him and not go like grin ear to ear and be like, oh my gosh, I can't, like in what you do, I can see it on your face, like because of the impact you make in these people's lives. Are you more passionate to help? Like, is there a time in your career where you just, I don't know, is it just a job? Like, in our business, I feel like there's a lot of times when I take for granted the impact that we have on people.
Yeah.
They come to us in a certain situation. We try to plan to get them to a different situation. And it's a job.
It is.
And sometimes I look at it very just A to B.
Sure.
In your space, I'm sure it's just a job at times. And it's like, but you get this, like almost immediate set. Like it takes us like a decade to see what actually happens. You're like, in a year, in 3 months and whatever, you're like, hey, we just, I met this guy 6 months ago. Now he's on a hike, like, whoa, like I can't even imagine that.
You get a lot of cards or responses from people.
Well, I do. And our office staff does. We've got a phenomenal staff that works together to get this taken care of from A to Z to have a positive outcome for our patients. And we have to be, our core values with nimble and responsive and make it better and always positive patient outcomes. And when we look at that aspect of it, I always think about the athlete, right? I was just watching an NFL game this past week and the quarterback walked up to the podium after the game. And it was like he was miserable because they were losing. And I'm on the other end of the TV watching this going, how can that dude be miserable? He gets to play in the NFL.
What game was that?
Right. It was the Eagles. It was Jalen Hurts. He was really going through a difficult time after that loss. And I get it. He was losing. But there was another aspect of me that thought, Kelvin, you have those days as well. Mm-hmm. No matter what you're doing, you have those days. You have those seasons of life. And it's outside circumstances really is what I feel can kind of put that dampened cloud over your perspective of things. But, man, when you can step out of yourself and really get over yourself and realize it's not about you, it's about what you're doing to serve someone else. That is where you change people's lives. And it gives you, I think, an attitude of gratitude because there's a standard that we have to take care of folks. I mean, we're all professionals and we have a standard or we wouldn't be where we are. Mm-hmm. And that standard gets watered down sometimes. But I think we also have to see it as I got to get back to the standard I'm used to working at. And then I'm grateful for what I get.
I can't imagine, having some of the experiences that you have. Like, I want to send a video guy to like be a part of one of those stories.
Sure. Capture it
from beginning to end. Somebody that would allow us to, meet somebody who's going to either have an amputation or whatever and just share their story through that to the point where they're going to be able to walk again.
Yeah.
And actually in the depths of despair where they can't walk, like hearing some of those testimonies and those struggles from before it happened to when it happened like this, I'm never gonna, whatever they're gonna say to, I'm on the mountaintop again, I'm walking again. Like that would just be such an inspiration.
Yeah.
And for us, when it's the day-to-day mundane, we're working, it's a job. Like I don't feel like we have as many opportunities to see that impact. And when we do, the longer you're in this business, you get to the point where you have more and more of your clients retiring on a year-to-year basis, but it doesn't feel the same as like a little story you tell is like paramount to like a big story that we can experience. Like I've had clients, teachers, people garbage men that have had a career that didn't pay a whole lot and be able to retire a million, or people that never made more than $43,000 a year, retire completely comfortable, never have to worry about ever going back to work again. That's a huge accomplishment, especially in today's environment. Just doesn't feel the same as like I couldn't walk and now I can.
Yeah.
Like it is, they're both amazing, but one just has a perception that another one doesn't.
Right. One of the struggles I have in my personal life is I'm always looking for the next obstacle, right? Always looking for the next win, whether that's with a patient or whether that's in business, my personal life, my physical life, my relationships. And that can sometimes get in the way because you're constantly focused on winning instead of enjoying the fruits of your labor and the outcomes you get, which is, on our website, we posted specific videos that show a patient's journey, several patients' journeys that are on our website that show you what happened before their surgery. And then it takes you through their surgery. And then it takes you through the outcomes that have come after the surgery years later. And so that's what I really think hits me today is, man, enjoy the moment. Enjoy what you're doing, because whether it's a financial advisory role or whether it's a clinician in prosthetics and orthotics or whether it's an NFL football player or you're working for the city, it doesn't really matter what the occupation is. And what I think matters, and I tell our 4 kids this all the time, is that I want you to be passionate. If you're going to work out, get your money's worth, right? Exhaust yourself. Walk away from it saying, I left everything out there. And that's a big part of my life, personal life. And so I get what you're saying, but I also want to encourage you and anyone else who's in a different industry. If you take that passion you have for what you're doing and you just expound upon it, there's so many things that we can't see that we can do in people's lives that we change as a result of what we're doing, because that's a specific talent and gift that God's given you to use. And are you using it? Right? Sometimes we get jealous of our gifts and talents that we don't have instead of focusing on what we do have. And we can always look around, and I tell my kids a lot, I say, you always want what you don't have.
Yeah.
And then when we get it, we figure out that that doesn't really bring me to satisfaction.
And you're on to the next thing.
You're on the next thing.
My family and I were fortunate. We were in NYC this past weekend. We were in New York City. My kids had
loved that place.
Never had the opportunity to be in Manhattan and Times Square. So we stayed in Times Square. My wife did a phenomenal job of planning everything out. And they got to see 8 million people, right? And the busyness, the city that never sleeps. And I thought about on the plane ride home, I thought,
was this recently?
It was just this past weekend. We flew back in Sunday. And on the plane ride,
that's a great time of year.
Yeah, it's phenomenal at Christmas. It was just, couldn't pick a better time to be there. But I thought of all the busyness. I mean, New York City, the mecca of busyness, never sleeps. How many of these people are just satisfied and joyful and content?
Not a whole lot.
Or is it, what's next? What's next? I got to get the next item, right? And I really did some kind of soul searching. I always do. I always like to take moments like that because you're not going anywhere on a plane, and it's a good time to self-reflect. We were on a short flight home, so no internet service, and it was just quiet and it was calm, and it was just a time to just be grateful for where I live. Number one, and there's not 8.5 million people daily, but number two is just enjoy where you are, be content in who you are, and take the gifts and talents you have and just explode with them.
When you think back over your career and all the amazing lives that you've been able to change, is there any particular story or situation that really pops out as like, yeah, this one was incredible?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, right? There's so many when you think about your career and lives you've changed. But one specifically, well, maybe two specifically, is a young lady who's now a 17-year-old. She lives locally here in the area. She's horseback. She barrel races. um, Ironically, she's at a dirt track. She's passionate about dirt track racing, and so her family's involved in it. So let's back up 12 years ago. She was around 3 years old. She's on a lawnmower with her grandfather, falls off the lawnmower, gets her foot amputated as a result of the traumatic accident. So you can imagine her mother, entire family are just distraught. And so I started taking care of her right after, and have been taking care of her now for about 10 to 12 years. And as a result, she is 1 month older than my daughter, my oldest daughter.
Oh my God.
So I watched them grow up together.
Are they friends?
They are not friends.
But you've been able to watch.
I've just been able to watch them. They graduated from high school the same year. They went through the same things in life. And so now this young lady is 19 years old. She works full time. She still barrel races. Every Friday night, you can find her at a local dirt track doing a national anthem, riding a horse around the track. She is passionate about horses. She is passionate about life. She lives on a farm in the Charlotte area. And her story and her life is just so positive. And it's just so neat to see her because she's been through the valley, right?
Yeah.
Imagine what she faced with adversity in school growing up, questions she had to answer, but she's always handled it with grace. And she's a phenomenal kid. Another story, and her personality is just super bubbly all the time.
Yeah.
Another young lady I think about is, so put yourself in this position. You're in your mid-40s. You've been athletic all your life. You're doing athletic training classes at the local gym. You're even teaching cycling, teaching some of the classes. You never miss one. She's the one who's there at 5:15 in the morning. She's super high energy, gets it done. She's a full-time employee. She goes in for a knee replacement. Bad result happens. As a result, her body just kind of rejects the knee replacement. After the knee replacement's done, 3 weeks later, she goes from having a simple knee replacement to having had her foot amputated. So fast forward, she finds this out 48 hours before her amputation. So you've got literally 2 days to make a decision about whether to have your foot amputated or fight it with antibiotics the rest of your life and probably not walk and have functional life again. She elects to have it amputated. She has the amputation. So here we are 4 years later. This was in 2018. Here we are, 2023, 2022. She's up. She's doing athletic training classes again. She's ambulatory. She does anything she wants. She still teaches cycling every Friday morning. And ironically, this past Thursday morning, I'm in the Charlotte Douglas Airport, 5:30 in the morning, and someone says, "Kelvin!" I turn around. It's her. She's walking through the scanner, wearing her prosthesis, and she's sitting down. And what's really cool is security is swiping everything. They're doing the cotton swab on her prosthesis, and I'm in the background going. And so we walk up.
I'm a part of this story.
We hugged in the airport, and it was just really neat because I thought, "Where are you going?" She said, I'm heading to Chicago to see family. And she's like, "Do what I want." And she's just
doesn't hold her back.
It doesn't hold her back. Even if it does, Paul, she is such just a strong person when it comes to personality and resilience. And she is just resilient. Everything bounces off. She always has a smile on her face. I'm sure she has days of where she is like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to deal with a prosthesis that I have to wear. But she just keeps going. So those are two of many, many people's lives that we've got to change.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And I mean, it is just, when I'm sitting here talking to you guys about this, it just really puts it in perspective. And it's really humbling.
Yeah. I think it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Is there ever a story that was surprising where you're just like, wow, I didn't expect that?
Yeah, there is. I think about one young man who's he's 20 years old. And obviously I told you where I grew up, and growing up, everyone was friends, right? So if I'm in a different part of the state and someone sees me and they have any relationships with that part of the state, they're like, "You're Lumbee Indian." And I'm like, "Yeah, if you were asking, because we all just kind of have these physical features." And so my mom calls me actually about this time last year, and a friend of hers she went to high school with said, "Listen, I heard that your son does prosthetics." And she said, "Yeah, he does. He lives up in the Charlotte area." And she says, "Well, her son just had an accident at a paper mill company and he had to have his arm amputated. He's now in Augusta Burn Center." And so his arm was actually pulled into the paper pulp welding machine. And then his arm came out of the machine and they proceeded to fly him to Augusta Burn Center immediately because of the burns on his arm. Obviously 30-degree burns, 100% burn all the way up to his shoulder. And fortunately, this young man was able to have the amputation just above his wrist. So he's below the elbow as an amputee now. And so 3 hours away, my mom knows someone who inquires that, does your son do prosthetics? And she said, yeah, he's in the Charlotte area. I get a phone call to take care of this young man. So it was just kind of neat to see how I certainly believe that the Lord had his hand in that, because I got to meet him. He's 20 years old, newborn son, his girlfriend and him are raising. And it was just really neat to see him fit with his prosthesis. So we fit him with this pretty neat prosthetic device that actually is picked up off electrodes and electric memory out of the muscle cells.
Wow.
So he's able to open, close, rotate the wrist unit. He's able to do anything he wants with his prosthesis. Can feel hot and cold. It's just really neat.
Wow.
So what was really neat is he gets this past fall, starting in November, he got to go deer hunting again. And that was really neat because he could actually use his prosthesis to deer hunt. And he said, one of the funniest stories is I asked him, are you functioning? Are you doing okay? He goes, yeah, I got to change my son's diaper for the first time. So it was really cool to hear that part of the story. And I just find it ironic that my mom, 2-3 hours away, his mother, 20 minutes away, she finds them through a coordinated relationship through a cousin of mine. And we just hit it off. And so now he's a patient of mine and I get to take care of him. So I think that's God's hand at work and allowing me to see that young man be.
How do you, when I listen and hear all these stories, which is incredible, how is what you do affect these people's self-esteem? Just like you said, that woman, highly energetic, she's an athlete, she's doing this, she's doing that. And then in 48 hours, she finds out she's got to make a decision that she's got to amputate her foot. Sure. A 4-year-old little girl, gets run over by a lawnmower. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Losing her foot, her self-esteem. Like it seems like God used that in a very amazing way in those two people. What 20-year-old would be excited about changing a son's diaper? It seems like God is using these things in such an amazing way. How is their self-esteem being affected, like before versus after versus like 5 years down the road? What are you noticing? What are you seeing change in somebody's self-esteem?
We talk with our patients often, especially we like to see them preoperatively if at all possible. So if it's an elective amputation, we can meet with them before surgery to talk to them about what the possible outcomes are going to be. Mm-hmm. For example, I have a 48-year-old now, and she unfortunately just had both limbs amputated as a result of a bacterial infection, otherwise high functioning person in society. And you talk about the mourning season that someone goes through after the amputation. We absolutely encourage that for folks who have amputations. You want to have that season of discouragement, mourning.
You want to.
Yes, you want to. Because think about this. When you lose a loved one unexpectedly or even expectedly, there's a mourning process that psychology says you need to go through, right? You've got to go through to see how you're going to deal with this. And that's important. And when that happens, if you don't go through that process, most of the time, us as men, we don't like to hear the word, it's okay to be depressed. It's okay to have a downtime. It's okay to have a moment of pity. But that's absolutely encouraged after you've had an amputation, because if you don't, you're going to skip over that. And what you're going to do is you're going to go through that later on in life, or we're going to take it out on someone. But I think you also find out that your self-esteem, and that's one aspect of this that I so enjoy, is encouraging other folks after they've had the amputation and get up and walk again. It's so encouraging. And sometimes I forget just how much, I don't want to say power, but authority to give someone a release of, you're doing well. Mm-hmm. Look at yourself. Be proud of where you've come. So gain your self-esteem where you've come and what the obstacles you've overcome, instead of, look what's missing. Instead, look what you got to keep, right? You're alive. You were sick. Your surgeons kept you alive. Because of the sickness, it put you in this position, but you're alive and you're getting to function and you get to tell a story. I tell all my patients, and I even talk to our kids about this, is what's the story you want to tell? Is it a story of, look at me, I'm an amputee. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Look at me, I can't do this. I gave up. Yes. Or is it a story of, yeah, but I still am alive? Or they don't even know that you have an amputee. Exactly. Yeah. Some of our patients walk, no one knows they're wearing a prosthesis, right? That's an opportunity for you to tell a story about what's happened in the field of battle, right? You're saving our lives. You're protecting our country. You lost a limb as a result of it. I don't want to say that's something to be proud of, but it's certainly something that just allows you to tell a story. I mean, who's not inspired by a veteran who's serving our country? I've got a young man I take care of right now who was in battle as a result of a IED, had to have a lower limb amputation, went back into service. Wow. Now is retired. He's working in Columbia at the VA. He drives back and forth every day from the Charlotte area, and he serves our veterans. He doesn't have to anymore. He's retired. He's like, that's what I'm passionate about. And I love when people ask me what happened. How did I end up being an amputee? Right? So it's what we get to do with the story we get to tell. Mm-hmm. And I just want to stress that to all of our patients, whether you're 15, whether you're 4, like my little guy that I take care of who wants to play soccer again with his prosthesis on, or whether you're 87, young lady year old or 87-year-old I saw yesterday. She just wants to walk again in her house. That's what she wants to do. So I think that's the story. You've got to decide what story is you want.
So as a business owner, I know tons and tons of business owners, and just hearing you talk, I'm just overwhelmed, throughout this entire conversation about, the passion that you have for your business, the impact that you have on these people's lives, the self-esteem that you give people, the functionality you give back to people, or give to people for the first time. It's easy for me to sit here and go, man, what you do impacts, not only the people that you serve, but the lives around those people, because the story that they get to tell now impacts so many other lives than just their own. Because if I ever was around somebody that gone through a situation like this, I would be so inspired every day. Like, like, wow, look what they did, just hearing you. So what would you say to another business owner that is struggling, or employee, somebody who's struggling to find purpose in what they do that's not as obvious as yours? Like, anybody watching this is gonna be like, dang, like, wow, what an inspiration, you've done. Like pour into somebody that just has a 9-to-5 job, or as a business owner in an industry that's very difficult, like lighting. Somebody was, a lighting professional. What impact are they going to feel like they make on people? Somebody who has a job that's just not as easy as yours to see the impact. Like, from your perspective, how do they find the same satisfaction and purpose that you have?
Well, I'll speak to the business owner first. It is so easy for us as business owners to get hung up in those three silos of marketing and sales, operation, and the gadgets that we make, right?
The job.
The job. And every Tuesday morning, I have a meeting with my office manager, and it's to discuss the accounts payable. It's to discuss insurance reimbursement,
The business.
how it's shrinking.
Yeah.
It's to discuss all the nasty stuff, right? But necessary.
Yeah.
And we all have that, whether it's relationships we have with other people. There's a stuff that you got to address, or else you can't have the relationship.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Right. And so as a business owner, I would just encourage, number one, if you're not part of C12, you need to look at that.
Wait. What's C12?
Well, C12, Christian 12 group, 12 men, right?
Yeah.
And as we get together
And women.
And as we break bread together, I got to tell you, as a business owner, there's nothing that brings me more comfort than to know another Christian man's miserable as I am sometimes in dealing with the aspects of business that
Are you trying to sell people?
So
that's so funny.
I just think that when we can commiserate with someone else, but we know it's necessary, right? Whether you have one of our colleagues is running a trucking company.
Yeah.
Right. I don't understand a trucking company, but I can tell you he's dealing with the same issues I am.
Yeah.
It's just camouflaged in a different way.
Yeah.
But we all deal with that as business owners. And so I want to encourage business owners, surround yourself with men that are, number one, wiser than you are, but find someone that you can bring along beside you, because a leader always has to surround himself with people he can learn from, to not make the same mistakes, and to pour into someone else, serve other people.
Amen to that.
Yep. And that's got to be intentional. As far as the 9-to-5, right? I saw so many of those this past weekend in New York City, whether it was the Uber driver, whether it was a city transportation. But I will say this. I noticed Sunday afternoon when we arrived back in Charlotte, the gentleman driving our bus had a super positive attitude. And I thought, whether he loves his job or not, it certainly looks like it. And he enjoys being around people. And I tell, my kids, is if you can learn how to work with people in life, you can go a long way.
Oh, yeah.
You can name your ticket. If you show up on time and you can work your problems out with other people, you can have crucial conversations, uncomfortable conversations. That is where you go to another level. So that 9-to-5 out there, maybe you've got other aspects of your life you want, other things you want to accomplish. Maybe you're happy where you are. That's great. Continue to do it. But I would encourage you, if there's other areas of your life that you want to improve on, you got to approach uncomfortable conversations, because we all want, what kind of outcome do you want from those conversations? Is it to bring personal growth in your life, or is it to just kind of be average and just blend in with everyone else? I don't know about you guys, but I can tell you, I'm just not interested in that part of life. I want to be above average. I want to be great at what I'm doing. Far from it right now. And I really haven't even defined what that looks like.
So what I hear you saying right there is somebody's perspective on how they see their position is the difference between finding purpose and what they do and not. So for example, you said the bus driver, my middle son travels all over for soccer, and we're all over the country. And this last summer we were in Denver, and we had to take an Uber driver. I don't remember why, and because we had our own car, but I don't remember why we had to take an Uber one night. And we got into this Tesla Uber guy's car, and it was like stepping into a game show. Sure. So we get in this car, and he was super friendly. And he's like, "Do you guys want to chat, or you just want to sit? You guys just talk, do your thing, and I just drive." And I was like, "No, we're open." You know, we had about a 25-minute drive. And he goes, "Well, you want to play a game?" And my son, just getting off soccer field or whatever, he's like, "Sure." So we played this, like, I don't know, trivia movie game show, like, as we're driving. And it would end up being so much fun. Like, my son got involved in it, which, for a teenager,
sure.
I don't know. And we ended up having, even my son, when we were done, it was a couple weeks later, he's like, "No, we played that game in that car." Like it was a fun experience. He's an Uber driver, you know, like, but he brought such fun to that. And he was so willing to just do his job. Or if he's like, you want to have a lot of fun. And at the end of the ride, he's like, you know, hey, follow me on here. He's like, I'm constantly playing games. He goes, you know, what's life if we can't have fun? And his perspective was, it's not just a job. I get to be with people and I want to have fun with people. It impacted me. I remember a year, you know, it's been a long time, 6 to 8 months.
It stuck with you.
It stuck with me, you know, and what you said, you know, was the same thing. And there was another incident that happened with my 2 boys in New York City a couple years ago. This is probably 10 years ago. And we were there. I do sport trips every year, and we want to hit all the major stadiums in the US. We've been doing this for about 12, 13 years. And this one year we're in New York City, and there was like 20 of us, fathers and sons. And it was so fun. And at this one, we were going from restaurant to another place. I don't remember where. It wasn't a stadium. It was somewhere else. And so we had to break up in all these different Uber cars or taxis. So we grab a taxi, and I was super protective over my boys when we first got there because it's New York City.
Sure.
And then this was like the second or third day, and they were kind of comfortable with everybody else and like, we're going with so-and-so. So thank God I didn't know about this until after. They were all in the line. We all start taking cars. Well, when we get to where we were, my oldest comes up and he's like, Dad, our ride was awesome. And he's like, our cab driver was crazy. Like, we got stopped, and he like gets out of his car and he starts screaming at everybody, directing traffic, getting out. Come to find out, he wasn't an Uber driver. He was just a guy trying to make a quick buck. And he just picked these people up, and my friends didn't even pay attention. And they're like halfway to where we need to go, and they're like, this guy's not a cab. He's not an Uber. There's no documentation anywhere. And they just got into some stranger's car, but he was hilarious, and he wanted to do a good job because that's why he got out of the car. It wasn't because he was a freak. It was because he got out and he's like, no, I got to get these people to where they need to go because they're with a group of people and everybody else is ahead of me and we got to catch up. So he's like, you go over there. Like he's like getting everybody out in the stoplight. It was crazy. And my kids to this day say that was the best non-cab ride they've ever been on, because this guy went above the call of duty to have a good time. He wasn't necessarily trying to have a good time, but he was doing the right thing.
Right.
You know, and his perspective on what he was doing was just super fun. And these are cab drivers, like Uber drivers. Like, you want to talk about a career that you feel like is a dead end. I don't mean that in a bad way, because then you can make some money doing that.
Sure.
But where you have no impact.
Yeah.
You're driving somebody from point A to point B. You're never going to see them again. And yet I have multiple stories of those experiences that have stuck with me probably for the rest of my life. One of them, I wasn't even in the car.
Yeah. And it's because he made an impression.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. He was an Uber driver, taxi driver, pastor at a church, clinician in prosthetics, financial advisory, whatever it may be. It's what impression did you make and what story did you tell that they're going to walk away with? Because everyone walks away with a story, right? Everyone walks away with a story. It's been said that all that really walks back from a man's grave is his legacy. Mm-hmm. His legacy is with the people he influenced.
Yep.
And what's the story they're going to tell about dad, mom, my boss, a friend, right? What's the story? That is so important in life. And that's what I think about. I mean, because there's so many things I haven't done or accomplished yet that I want to do. I want to travel to a third world country and do prosthetics. That's one of the biggest needs in our world right now. Mm. But I also know right now my priority is my mission field at my house with my kids and with my business and the people we're getting influenced there. You know, locally, we get to now sponsor an adoption center, Isaiah 117 House. And it's been pretty cool because that's going to house up to 26 kids that are in foster care. And some of those kids, most of those kids need our clinical expertise.
That's awesome.
And so that's what we specialize in. And doing and trying to make an impact in that area, right? Mm-hmm. So taking the resources we have and just trying to change the area we're in.
Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know, everybody that watches our show. So if in the event somebody needs to get a hold of you because they know somebody or they are somebody that needs your type of service, how do they get a hold of you?
So our website's the easiest, and it's pretty cool.
The easiest. Wow.
So
you set the bar.
Yeah.
www.poibelieve.com. So
what's POI?
POI is the Prosthetic and Orthotic Institute, and we've shortened that up for the purposes of not having to spell those two words. And then Believe, because we want you to know that we want you to have a positive patient outcome. And we specialize in everything from pediatrics all the way up to geriatrics. And it's really neat. And I will say, being here today just really pulls another layer off for me to realize that this is a mission field I'm in.
Oh, yeah.
Changing people's lives.
You are clearly changing people's lives.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you for being on the show. This was awesome. We're gonna work it out where I'm gonna come over and we're gonna follow one of these people and tell them their story if they will.
That'd be great. I've got several candidates. They love it.
We're gonna make that happen. That would be incredible. So thank you so much, and God bless you and your amazing business ministry.
Thank you for having me, Paul.